Do you want to be healthier, yet you just don't know what to do? All these shows telling you this and that, but nothing seems to work. Well, listen close. Golden State Media Concepts has got something great for you. The Health and Wellness Podcast dedicated to workout trends, healthy eating habits, diet, and everything about healthy living. Join us in our banters as we help you not just live life to the fullest, but live it to the healthiest.
GSMC Health and Wellness Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Alex. You guys, we're almost at the end of January at this point, and I've been thinking a lot about motivation recently, particularly in relationship to discipline. So I already regularly go to the gym, but I've been seeing a lot more people in there during the first few weeks of the new year. Been seeing a few less recently. But also I've been thinking with myself and with my ex, we're buddies for the gym, how differently we approach it. He is very disciplined, and I have been relying more on motivation, which I don't think is wholly sustainable at this point. So today we're going to talk a little bit about motivation versus discipline, how those are different. We're going to discuss some motivational rewards, as well as intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation, gamification, Galway's inner game, and really just ultimately how to improve our collective motivation and self-discipline to make sure that we are hitting these health and wellness goals we're setting for ourselves as we get further into the new year. So first up, we're going to talk about the difference between motivation and discipline. So discipline is closer to impulse control. Discipline is doing the hard things even when you don't feel like it, and having a routine. That's what they try to instill in people in the military, to make sure that even when the going gets tough, the tough keep going. Discipline is going to keep you going when your motivation fails. And motivation is, trying to convince yourself that you need to do it. Motivation gets you up and running, but discipline is really what keeps you on track. However, these traits reinforce each other. They did a study with athletes a few years back and ultimately found that long-term discipline requires motivation, and short-term motivation requires discipline. So you need both, pretty much, is what they're getting at. Your brain does not like abrupt changes. That's why most New Year's resolutions fail. We decide that we're going to do too much too soon, and we don't really manage our expectations, and so we get burned out. What we can do instead to help with that is to take some little steps to establish a new baseline. We want to then take another little step and move the line again, and making those tiny habits reestablishes a new normal. So in that way, you're not constantly fighting to take one giant leap. You're taking that small step first. One raindrop raises the sea. Yes, that's a Dinotopia quote, but it stands. So small, consistent steps lead to big changes. If we think about that Dinotopia quote, one raindrop doesn't result in a whole 4 inches of precipitation. It's not one giant raindrop. It's lots of little raindrops consistently over time that create pools where none were before. So in Central Texas, you see that a lot in farm watering holes in May and October. We won't get any rain for a long time, and then you will get a deluge. And sometimes that results in natural disasters like flooding, but also for the farm animals, it can result in good things like their watering holes kind of filling up, and then you'll see a difference in where the animals are gathering throughout the seasons. So in that way, these little changes, like these raindrops, can lead to big positive changes. There is a specific book I want to talk about today as well called Drive by Daniel Pink. And in it, he talks about baseline rewards, if-then rewards, and goals, and how utilizing those different methods can help and hurt us. So there are two main types of motivation in Pink's book. He terms extrinsic and intrinsic. Extrinsic motivation is like money or praise. They're things that you can't necessarily give yourself. Whereas intrinsic motivation is like just being happy that you've accomplished a challenging task. So, if you're coding or if you have been, working out and trying to improve the amount of time it takes you to hit your mile mark and the joy that you get when you finally, nail that piece of code and everything goes properly in your computer, or when you finally hit that 10-minute mile or whatever your goal is, then you get that, boost of dopamine and feeling good about it. That's an intrinsic motivator. So there are also two different types of tasks in Pink's book, algorithmic and heuristic. Algorithmics are when you have like a set path of instructions that are going to lead to an inevitable single conclusion. The heuristic task is kind of free form, so you have to be a little creative with that to complete the task. So the two types of motivations are going to be different in comparison with the tasks, and that's going to also depend on what type of reward you're going for. So if you're going for a baseline reward, that means just your bare minimum that everything else is measured off of. So, it's like your base salary at a job where you can also get benefits and perks and stuff like that. If your baseline rewards or your base salary isn't enough, then you're going to be focusing on other aspects of that job. The things that are not great are going to seem worse by comparison because you're not inherently going to be satisfied with what you're getting for this. So maybe working out for the ability to eat a piece of chocolate cake might not be enough for you because, you get, 2 minutes of cake after 30 minutes of working out. We have to make sure that we are using the correct motivators and the correct amount of these motivators in order to get us to where we need to be. So creating your own baseline reward is very important for that. And that's just going to be up to you individually and what you're comfortable with. For some people, chocolate cake is totally enough. I know a guy from work who works out so he can eat chicken wings. He eats a truly impressive, substantial amount of chicken wings every year. He has like the awards from the chicken wing place to prove it. And that is his baseline reward. And that is exactly what motivates him. So remember to go for what works for you. Think about what motivates you. Also, there are if-then rewards. So those are when we promise to give somebody something once a specific task is completed. So like if you ask your kids to go and read for 30 minutes and then they can have 30 minutes of screen time. The problem with that is that it makes the thing that they have to do to get the reward seem like something that's undesirable. So now they're going to be like, oh, reading a book isn't for fun. It's a thing that I have to do in order to get this other thing. So in order to eat your chocolate cake, you have to go and work out first. That's going to make you kind of view working out as a negative thing. So we want to try to avoid these contingent rewards. If you are going to use rewards, then really they need to be unexpected and they need to be meted out. So if you give someone a reward every time, even though that you didn't tell them up front that they were going to get it, then they are going to start expecting it. Same thing goes for the chocolate cake. If you're going to give yourself the chocolate cake every time as an if-then reward that's also a baseline for every time, then you're going to start really dreading that workout where you're like, oh man, I really want that chocolate cake. I don't want to do this stupid workout. And we don't want to frame it that way because then we are psychologically setting ourselves up for failure. Now, another way we can do this is to use goals. So goals are also an extrinsic motivator, and they narrow our focus. And so that's one reason they can be really effective, but it also can make you feel like it's restricting your view down to that one behavior. And so you're focusing too far on it. So we've talked before about that internal focus and how that can be damaging in some ways. So we want to make sure that we don't go too far in making these goals or these rewards to give you a hard time. We don't want them to become ineffective. We want to make sure that they keep working. So the drive towards those goals can help you make decisions that you might not consider in another situation. And that can be a double-edged sword. That can be a good thing and a bad thing. So to make rewards work, you want them to be for routines. So algorithmic tasks that we talked about, the ones that have a set path, A to B to C, and they require not a lot of creativity or going off the beaten path for it. So if you're going to be using rewards, those are going to be with routine tasks, and they won't typically undermine your intrinsic motivation for boring tasks because there's little or no intrinsic motivation to be a problem there. You want to make sure that if you offer yourself an extrinsic reward, that it's unexpected and only when the task is complete. So you can't really plan it. It's a lot easier to give others extrinsic rewards than to give yourself extrinsic rewards because, you know, it's kind of hard to surprise yourself, to be honest. So just be careful with the reward system because at a certain point, it can backfire in your motivation and drive. All right, guys, we're going to go on a quick break. And when we come back, we are going to talk about motivational rewards, eudaimonia and hedonia. Be right back.
Are you looking to learn more about the latest trends from the fitness world? Are you confused by all of the different trends that are out there? The GSMC Fitness Podcast is the place for you. The GSMC Fitness Podcast is the place to come for people of all skill and interest levels. Join us as we explore the latest trends in the fitness world. Does that new exercise really work? Should I try yoga? Whatever your question, chances are good you'll find an answer on the GSMC Fitness Podcast.
Difference between motivation versus discipline and how motivation can sometimes backfire when you use a reward system. Now we're going to talk about two different types of rewards, eudaimonia and hedonia. So Dr. Srini Pillai from Harvard had some thoughts on this. There are two main types of motivational rewards, the eudaimonia and hedonia. For the sake of simplicity, we're going to refer to those as E rewards and H rewards going forward. H rewards are superficial but observable. So they're like weight loss, your personal appearance, acceptance by your friends or people that you want to impress. It's more concrete and less effective, and also shorter lived. E rewards are going to be connected to a sense of purpose and meaning in life. They're less tangible, but they're more effective, especially in the long term. So, with H rewards, the kind that we think of when we think of rewards. So it's going to be like pleasure and suffering as a dichotomy of the components of well-being. That's how H rewards are structured. I have to do this thing that I don't like in order to get this thing I want. I have to work out so I can eat chocolate cake. So it's a little bit misleading and reductionist at that point, and it's not the only way. But it's also kind of, think of hedonism for it. You're doing the thing that you have to do because you want to feel good. So going to the gym sucks, but I'm doing it because I'll feel better later. Or I'm eating a salad and cutting out tasty food because doing it will make me skinny and then I can have chocolate cake. It's just a dichotomy of suffering in exchange for pleasure. Whereas the E rewards are the better ones. Studies indicate that pursuit of solely H rewards are linked to increased depression, but E rewards are linked to an improved mood because they activate your brain's reward center, which is called the ventral striatum, if you're curious. Aristotle also put forth the idea that the most important goal for individuals is to obtain a feeling of overall well-being. And that includes, living virtuously. It was a lot of things that go into it. Being truthful and honest and treating people well and just overall the good things in life. So he defined eudaimonia as an evaluation of an individual's life experience as a whole. So we've talked about the holistic perspective before, and that's pretty much what Aristotle was going for here. A holistic view of the good things present in a person's life. So cumulatively, what that looks like. He also supported the concept of H rewards as a supplement to that. So wealth, good friendships, and power help in creating a good life, but they aren't sufficient on their own to sustain you. So according to Carol Riff, who has extensively studied these E rewards, there are 6 main areas of your life that you can reshape to enhance them. So those are going to be greater self-acceptance, higher quality relationships, because remember, for social relationships, we're looking for quality, not quantity. Being in charge of your life, which they term autonomy, owning your own opinions, even when others oppose them. So believe in yourself and back yourself up. Personal growth, and having a strong intrinsic sense of purpose. Remember, we want that purpose and meaning to come from inside of us. It can't be extrinsically motivated. So if you work on those factors, you are much more likely to feel intrinsic motivation and rewards, and therefore enhance your own motivation to achieve the lifestyle changes that you are seeking out. Now, there was another study here by Elfhag and Rossner, 2004, in which they found that social support, less overall life stress, which is not always controllable, but we'll control for the things that we can, and more stability of weight patterns, in addition to eating and emotions, are associated with maintaining a healthy lifestyle and achieving weight loss goals. Now, I don't know about you guys, but as a lady, I have had a lot of difficulty over the years with maintaining my weight patterns, especially as I get older. I'm 31 now, and as that changes and my body changes, how it deposits its fat, I feel like I am carrying it differently. I don't have empirical evidence for that on me right now, but I definitely feel like it settles differently than it did in my early 20s. That can make a big difference. Emotional eating is also important to keep in mind. Remember, we talked about how people, regardless of how fit they are, tend to reach for junk food, even if they're not reaching for more food than they generally consume when they are stressed out. That's just our body going, hey, we need these calories so that we can deal with our fight, flight, or flee response. So having a good coping mechanism for your emotions is very important for regulating your weight and your fitness and health goals as well. Because if your go-to each time that you're upset is to eat something unhealthy, then you're going to promote unhealthy goals that are going to undermine your own wellness and sense of well-being. So we just want to focus a little bit on that. And so it's not just about creating good habits, but it's also about unlearning the habits that are not serving us as we go forward in life. So to increase eudaimonia, you should also act authentically and practice mindfulness. So think about the virtues and the morals that are important to you. Think about who you are as a person, and as well, where you want to be, who you want to be, that is, where you want to be in your spiritual growth. Acting in congruence with your sense of integrity and your virtues and who you envision your best self as being is very important for you, for that sense of authenticity. That's going to help you reduce your stress as well, because you're not going to be pretending to be somebody else. That's going to help you live your best life to increase that eudaimonia. You can also practice mindfulness. And that doesn't just have to be meditation, as we've discussed before. You can also go for a walk and just really pay attention to all of your senses. Notice the little details. Notice how green the grass is. Or even, a lot of people don't tend to like dirt and gravel, but you can notice, how small those grains are and how remarkable it is that your pathway is made up of all of these pieces of sediment. I think that that's pretty fascinating. If you put them under a microscope, then you can see how beautiful they look under it. I know that not everyone just has a microscope lying around, but I got one for my godson for Christmas one year, and if you have kids around, you might have one in your house as well. So just notice the little details. The smell of the fresh air, the smell of petrichor after it's recently rained, or, I love the smell of cut grass and bonfires. Use all those senses. Listen to the birds and the different bugs that are singing and making noises, and think about which types of bugs those are. Just really tune in with all of your senses. That's mindfulness, being in the moment. So they did another study on lawyers a while back, and they found that lawyers who made more money and who were in it for the money were less happy than lawyers who made less money but focused on the social issues that they cared about in their law practice. So even though the lawyers their goal was money and they were getting what they wanted, they were still less happy overall than folks who were maybe struggling a little bit more, but had something that they cared about spiritually and emotionally and mentally. So eudaimonia is more than just, being happy. It's not happiness. Happiness is like an endpoint of eudaimonia. Eudaimonia is going to be pursuing that good life. What makes a life good? Being gentle, being kind, being aware of others and thoughtful, but also living a life that's true to yourself. So we are going to go on another quick break, and when we come back, we are going to talk about gamification and how that can help you with your motivation.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Rewards are the superficial ones that you usually think of when you think of rewards, like weight loss and personal appearance, and how those don't keep for a long time, but how e-rewards are really connected to who you are as a person, your sense of purpose and meaning in life. So those are more effective even if we can't really see the results. But if we connect our goals to that sense of purpose and meaning, they will be more effective long term. Now we're going to talk a little bit about gamification. So gamification is just the theory of turning mundane tasks into a game. So a lot of us like to play video games. Tons of people play video games. The average video game player is actually about 35 years old. I know we often think of it as being something that a lot of kids play or, teenage boys and stuff. But really, a lot of players are 35 years old. That's the average. And also about 47% are women, adult women. So we're counting Candy Crush and everything in there too. Those are games. They have elements of gamification in there where they are meant to have certain aspects to keep you playing, like points rewards and badges and achievements. It's a type of extrinsic motivation for the most part. But there are a couple different types that we're going to talk about right now. So, with motivation, you need to make sure that your motivation guides a desired action to obtain a reward. So motivation drives us to perform the desired action in order to obtain the reward. Intrinsic motivation is going to be mutually exclusive from all rewards, including intrinsic ones. You would perform those actions without the reward just because the act in and of itself is rewarding. Those are things like, you're gaining prestige or appreciation or just a sense of accomplishment. When you have like a really difficult essay to write, or you have a big thing coming up at church or at school or at work, and you finally get it done and you nail that presentation or you nail that singing event that you're doing, that sense of accomplishment, that intrinsic reward is what you're doing it for, because it feels good, not because you're getting compensated for it in any way. Whereas extrinsic motivation, as we talked about a little bit earlier, is going to be, somebody's going to give you money, or you're going to get a gift card or a performance bonus if you do better at something. So you have to keep those in mind. Now, with intrinsic motivation, Yu Kai Chu created something called the Octalysis Framework. So it has 8 core drives of motivation. So those key motivators are seeking out meaning, empowerment, social influence, unpredictability, avoidance, scarcity, ownership, and accomplishment. Now, this is the first level of Octalysis. We're not going to dive too deep into this because we do not have time. And he also offers a class on it online if anyone is interested in learning more after this. But it's basically telling you things like, beginner's luck. That's going to be meaning and empowerment. That might make you keep doing something that you might not otherwise do. Unpredictability is like gambling. You do that because there's uncertainty in it, or playing the lottery. There's always that thing that keeps you coming back of going, maybe this is going to be the time that I win the big one. In his TED Talk, he references an actual campaign to get people to start driving the speed limit by gamifying it. So if you drive over the speed limit, when you go past that little machine that tells you how fast you're going, it will automatically take a picture of you and fine you for it. However, if you are going the speed limit or slightly under when you go past it, then it will enter you into a lottery to win the money that is obtained from the folks who have gone over the speed limit and been fined. So they've essentially created a lottery for that, and it will result in people slowing their cars down because they'll go, oh, maybe this time I'm going to win it. If I slow down right now, then, I could actually win this time. Whereas I'm going to get a fine. Whereas the fine is associated with avoidance. You're trying to avoid any type of loss at that point. In this case, financial loss. Whereas the unpredictability and the curiosity are going to keep driving you to try to achieve that lottery win. So that's how those two work. Scarcity is just like, oh, hey, you only have, 24 hours before we're not going to make this t-shirt anymore. I see that on a lot of geek t-shirt sites. And I'm not going to lie, sometimes they almost get me because I really want those t-shirts, but I think they inevitably all come back. So that's neither here nor there, but that's how that kind of works. Ownership is also, it gives you like an investment in what you are working towards. And the sense of accomplishment, and that helps with things that have a progress bar. So video games that have progress bars, that helps out a lot. And social influence is, friending. That's why people try to build influence on Instagram and stuff. So that's what each of those do. Now that you know what those are your 8 core drives. And these are either intrinsic or extrinsic on the left and the right when you look at the octagon. I encourage you to Google it, and I'm also going to put it on the Twitter page later so that you guys can easily reference it if you'd like. And the top part is going to be white hat, and the bottom part is black hat. So Yukai took those terms from SEO optimization. So that's what websites like Google search engines and stuff use in order to help you find content. So some people will game that by just trying to use as many words as they can, just crazy amounts of keywords to the point that the information is almost incomprehensible, just to game the system and get traffic to their site. So that's called black hat motivation, and it's exploiting those weaknesses. Whereas white hat motivation is doing it the prescribed way and using it the way the algorithm is supposed to work. Now, white versus black hat motivation, it doesn't make black hat a bad method. So black hat motivation can work. There's an alarm clock called Snooze and Lose that cracks me up, because if you don't get up, if you hit snooze on your alarm instead of getting up, it will donate money to a nonprofit charity that you don't like. I thought that was very funny, and it's using something that you want to avoid or lose in order to motivate you to do something that you're supposed to already be doing. So if it's something you should already be doing, then black hat motivation can be very motivating and super helpful. So the way that Yukai tests to determine if something's extrinsically or intrinsically motivated is he goes, if the goal or object was removed, would the person still be motivated to take the desired action or not? So if a basketball player is practicing shooting hoops a lot, if they know that whatever they do, they'll lose their progress, then will they still choose to do so? That's a really important question to ask yourself. When in your goals, if you were to lose all progress that you've made in your workout routine or your fitness routine right now, would you still keep doing it? If you would stop doing it, then that means that your goal was extrinsically motivated. It's going to be like, the H rewards, where you are only doing it for prestige or for, because people are going to tell you that you're pretty or that you have, lost weight and stuff. It's that external recognition. Whereas the intrinsic motivation is going to be something you would have done anyway. So it's, what you would spend your time doing if the world was going to end tomorrow. Would you keep working out or because you're disciplined, or would you just stop because you're like, what's the point? So that's the way that intrinsic and extrinsic motivation work. And one way that you can work on that is through an app called Photocracy. So I found that recently when I was working on gamification for a nonprofit that I volunteer with. And the Photocracy app helps you out by giving you a nutrition plan. It also will help gauge where you are already in your fitness plan. And then it will give you a workout for it. So they also have a component of it, of course, in-app purchases where you can work with a coach as well. But without that, you can still use the app and you can compete with your fellow app users and you can compete against yourself. I think it's pretty fascinating. I will probably download it later so that I can try it out myself. But they do have a free version, no strings. So go ahead and check that out and see if that works for you in your motivation style. All right, we're going to go on a break. And when we come back, we're going to be talking about Galway's inner game and how it can work for you.
The GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible. Download the GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back. In our last segment, we were talking about gamification and how to make that work for you in your motivation. Now we're going to talk a little bit about Galway's inner game. So Galway is a tennis coach, and for several years, he coached all kinds of people in tennis and tried a bunch of different methods. He tried telling people what was right, what they were doing right. He tried telling them what they were doing wrong. And he found that no matter what he focused on in that right and wrong dichotomy, it did not work as well as focusing on their inner game. So when you are playing a sport or when you're doing anything that potentially causes you stress, you have an inner game and an outer game. The outer game is the actual playing of the game. That's the performance part. It's what you're doing. The inner game is what's inside your head. So that's what you're psyching yourself up for versus psyching yourself out. Part of establishing any new habit or developing an established habit is learning. And that's really what Galway focuses on here. And that's why you're here. So you can learn about how to do better with your fitness routines or how to expand your fitness routines that you already have, how to establish health and wellness goals. So how do we give ourselves our best shot at learning and at habit forming? So the outer game and the inner game are going to be very different. We're going to focus on the inner game because the outer game, that's the part that you work on through practice and everything. The inner game is just your head game. So that's stage fright, imposter syndrome, that little voice that cheers you on or tells you that you've already lost. Now, Galway refers to them as the self one, which is your conscious thought. That's the one that tells you what you're doing right and wrong. It's your judgmental part. And then self two, which is your subconscious component. That is the natural learner. Your self one communicates in words. It's that voice in your head going, "Oh man, Alex, you screwed that up again." And the self two is the one that thinks in pictures and images. So when you're visualizing what your goal is, that's self two. So Galway says that in order to teach yourself the best way and to form these habits better, you have to quiet the criticisms of self one to enhance the natural learning abilities of self two and let it just do its thing. So to do that, we don't want to think of our actions as positive or negative. They don't need to be mistakes when we accidentally, go to do something or we go to do a rep and our form wasn't great. Instead of thinking of it as a binary of good or bad, you should do more showing than telling by asking yourself different types of questions. So instead of saying, "Oh, that was terrible, you should do better, you know better, you know what your form's supposed to look like, come on," that's just going to lead to frustration. Instead of that, ask yourself questions like, why did the ball go that way? What am I doing differently now than I did last time to produce this result? That way, you're going to be observing your own performance without the judgment, and you're focusing on developing possibilities rather than beating yourself up for mistakes. So the other day, my ex was making marmalade in the other room, and he tried a couple different times, and it just wasn't going the way that he wanted. And then he finally got one that was going great, and he's like, "Man, I screwed up so many of those batches before I got this one right." And I was like, "Hey, don't look at it that way. Don't look at it as stuff that you messed up. Look at it as how much progress you've made. Look how far you've come already in this amount of time. You have done a substantial job." Now, Galway doesn't quite want us to think of it as positive because he believes that thinking of it as positive in the self one implies that there is a negative to self two. It implicitly carries the meaning that, okay, yeah, I'm doing great now because before I did bad. So he doesn't like to think of it that way. I felt that it was helpful for the marmalade, but Galway says to just go ahead and just imagine the image in our head of what we want this to look like and move toward it naturally. because he thinks that value judgments just get in our way of the natural learning and habit forming process. So according to him, he thinks the standard way of learning is step 1, you criticize or judge your past behavior. Step 2, you tell yourself to change and do better. And usually you're instructing yourself with word commands repeatedly. Like, come on, Alex, just get it together. You messed that thing up again. You always do this with that spreadsheet code. So you want to stay away from that. And then step 3, you try hard and you make yourself do it right. And then step 4, you critically judge yourself about the results of step 3, which leads you back into this vicious self-recrimination cycle of beating yourself up with self 1. So self 1 is just judging you hardcore. And that's how most people tend to approach learning and habit forming. And if anyone else is into bullet journaling, I also do that and have, in the last year, focused more on celebrating the things that I did do rather than being upset about the things that I didn't do. So that has helped me a lot in positively reframing my life. I'm a lot more positive this year than I was last year. I was talking to my best friends about that earlier, because it's those little steps that we take along the way to get to where we are. So the next step for Galway was to, now that we have discovered what the typical learning process is and how that's problematic, we want to try a learning style that is more enjoyable, that doesn't make us feel awful about ourselves and doesn't interfere with our natural learning process. So the inner game method of learning is to essentially be mindful. We need to observe our existing behavior without any judgment attached to it. So see what it is. Don't think about what it should be. For anyone who practices art, it's very similar. You're going to draw what you see, not what you think you see, unless that's your art style. But that was the best tip an artist has ever given me for my own artistic endeavors. Draw what you see, not what you think it should be. Same thing goes for your workouts and for your learning when we're changing these behaviors. We just see it for what it is and don't judge ourselves for it. Don't beat yourself up about it. So that's just being mindful. And practice mindfulness in all things, in learning, in habit forming. It's an act of personal growth as well as self-care and self-kindness. And self-kindness is one of the best things that I personally believe you can do for yourself in your spiritual and emotional and physical wellness. So once you've decided to be mindful and just reserve judgment while observing your behavior, then visualize the desired outcome. So you're going to really tune into self 2 and quiet down self 1 and just trust self 2 to let it happen naturally rather than telling self 1 to yell at yourself about it and to make it happen. Then you're going to continue a non-judgmental, calm observation of the results, verbatim from Galway, to repeat that cycle and continue learning. So this is also a great way to help unlearn bad habits. You need to not judge yourself, not beat yourself up in order to unlearn bad habits. It's about recognizing them as what they are when they pop up, and then quieting that judgmental voice, visualizing your desired outcome, and trusting yourself to go ahead and make the new outcome happen. So if you look at it that way, it's a lot healthier psychologically, it's a lot kinder to yourself, and it's going to help you a lot in getting out of your head. So it's going to help you not psych yourself out. It'll psych you up instead. So believe in self too. You are a natural learner. You are able to do this. Just quiet down the judgment and roll with it. All right, we're going to go on another break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about social collaboration.
Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? The GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast is a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts America's Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today. Download the GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back. In our last segment, we were talking about Galway's inner game and how that can give us our best shot at learning and forming new habits and even unlearning bad habits without beating ourselves up. It's a practice of self-kindness that is going to lead to better dividends in the long term. So now we are going to talk about social collaboration. So by social collaboration, I mean if you have health and wellness goals, fitness goals specifically as well, you can collaborate with your friends. I just mean work out with friends, commit to a new diet with friends. Accountability is going to increase your commitment. If you have someone else working on it with you, then if you're not following it, then they're going to maybe call you out on it. And that's important. They'll at least notice that you're not doing it. You don't want to beat yourself or your friends up about your habits. Remember, we're making better choices, not perfect choices. So it's okay to not get it perfect right out of the gate. We're reserving that self-judgment. Instead, we just want to encourage each other in that component. So hit each other up and go, hey dude, I'm at the gym right now. What are you doing? Have you been in the gym the last few days? One of my friends back home also has a similar back issue that I do. So we go to the chiropractor together when we are together, and when we're not, we have to do the same workout for our backs, the same stretches to help that out and increase our joint mobility as prescribed by our chiropractors. So I'll hit her up and I'll say, hey, have you done your stretches lately? Or she'll hit me up and say, hey, I've done my stretches. Have you done them? I'm like, oh no, I've been working out more, but I haven't been doing my stretches. And in that way, we just encourage each other. It's like, it's okay, just go ahead and do them tonight, or we can FaceTime together and do it. So even though she's in a totally different state, I can still do that with my best friend. Or if I hit her up and I say, hey, what are you doing? She will message me back with a picture of the gym equipment that she's working out on, if she's currently in the gym, or whatever she's cooking for dinner. We made healthy dinners together over Thanksgiving, and I gave her some recipes, she gave me some recipes, and now we'll just message each other and let the other know when we're eating the other one's recipes. So you get that sense of pride from it, and that intrinsic motivator of prestige is like, oh, my friend really liked my food, and they're making it. So not only is it encouragement and social collaboration, but it is also going to make you feel good in the moment by sharing those things. Also, working out with your friends is just fun. Hanging out with your friends is fun. The social aspect helps mitigate the drudgery associated with any workouts that you don't necessarily love. A University of Southern California study also found that people who worked out with people they liked, so friends, partners, colleagues, enjoyed the exercise more than those who worked out solo. So empirically, it has been shown that you will enjoy your workout more if you do it with a friend. And you can celebrate each other's progress. That's part of the fun too. It's not just an act of self-kindness. We're going to take that self-kindness and reflect it outwards as well, and be kind and supportive with each other. Another way that you can do that is there are Facebook groups that you can join that are very supportive. I'm in a lot of women's groups on there where it's just women loving and supporting other women. Any tiny win. We come from all walks of life. You know, women who are married, single, divorced, widowed, all different ages, all different nationalities. And we just come together and celebrate our little wins, like when we make an A on a test or when someone gets a gallery opening for their art. It doesn't matter what it is. We just all come together and encourage each other because celebrating each other's progress is fun, to be honest. It's really nice and wholesome. And if you had asked me a year ago if I would be a part of that group, I would have told you that sounded crazy and silly, and I would have probably been very sarcastic about it, to be honest. It's been a long year of growth for me, but at this point, I really enjoy it. I'm also part of Swolesome Chad posting, and that is men and women focusing on, and non-binary individuals as well, focusing on, just uplifting each other. There's a lot of wholesome groups on there. There's a wholesome masculinity one as well, and I absolutely love how positive everyone is and how positive they are, especially in Swolesome Chad posting and encouraging people on their fitness journeys without ever belittling them. And they also have really great moderators, so if somebody is mean, then they get booted real quick. They get insta-banned. So they don't really have many people who pop up and say anything snide. So it's a really healthy, positive community. So if you don't have somebody around you that you can work on that, or if you're working around your own wellness issues like agoraphobia or social anxiety, where you don't want to go out of the house and be in public social situations, you can also try something like that for celebrating your progress and working out with others. Also, although working out can be fun, misery also loves company, and we can make that positive by commiserating. So bonding through achievement and perseverance, it's just like team sports. You win and lose together, and you can have a rough day together and a great workout together and celebrate each other's progress, as well as just agree that it was a rough day, but we did it. And that's what counts. So social relationships have also been shown to affect mental health, improve your health, and improve your behavior and physical health, and also reduce mortality risks. One study found that 95% of people who started a weight loss program with their friends completed the program, and they were 42% more likely to maintain the weight loss. Compared to that, only 76% of folks who started the program alone completed it. So you have like a 19%, almost 20% higher chance of finishing that program it's not a chance, it's a likelihood. If you work out with your friends, you're more likely to finish it if you work out with your friends. And I found that to be true in my personal life. When I worked out with my tita doing P90X and stuff, if I worked out with her, I worked out a lot harder and I would complete the actual workout rather than giving up 45 minutes in because I was so tired from the cardio. It helped me to push through. So I'm also more likely to work out and to complete it if I go with friends, and that's true for a lot of folks too. A 2016 study in the Journal of Obesity also found that people who are overweight tend to lose more weight if they spend time with fit friends. And it's additionally positively correlated in regards to the amount of time spent and total weight loss. So the more time that you spend with your fit friends, if you are overweight, then the more total weight loss you tend to experience. And part of that is inspiration, part of it is social encouragement, and it can also increase your performance in both time and intensity, just like I said happened with me and my tita. So a Kansas State University study found that people who exercised with a partner that they thought was more capable or more fit than them increased their workout time and intensity by 200%. It fosters a healthy sense of competition. And I use that principle or similar one in college. I would start each semester in each of my classes and identify the smartest person in the room and study with them and compete with them. I've been very competitive in academia ever since first grade, I think, when I would compete with the two boys who were at my table for math. We would see who could get done the fastest, but also having it correct, and who could write our numbers the longest, because everyone was trying to write their numbers to 1,000, and who could read the most books. And we just made it very competitive. And it was healthy. We would encourage each other too and honestly congratulate each other, not being, bitter or passive aggressive or anything. And you can do that with your workouts too. Now, with competition, there is an effect called the Kohler effect that states that no one in the group wants to be the weakest link. I imagine there's probably an evolutionary drive component to that. And a study in the Journal of Sport and Exercise Psychology had a bunch of participants perform several planks alone and with a partner who was always better than the participants. So they assigned them this partner. And they found that working out with a partner increased motivation and resulted in participants holding their planks longer with the partner than they did when they were alone. In fact, they increased their plank time by 24%. I don't know about you, but I don't particularly enjoy planks. So I'm going to have to try to talk someone into doing them with me to engage them in that healthy competition. It also helps with time. So when you work out with a partner, you're more likely to spend more time exercising, especially when you do it as a team. In a study by the Society of Behavioral Medicine, that doubled the amount of workout time of folks who exercised alone. Now, in the words of Isabella Rossellini from one of my favorite movies, Death Becomes Her, and now a word of caution. So be mindful of your own limits when performing group workouts. The competition can backfire if you push yourself too far to compete or to impress someone. When I work out with my ex, we do a lot of the same routines, but to different degrees. I am 5'2", and he is 6'2". So our goals are different. Not inherently because we're male and female or are different sizes, but we just have different goals. And when I work out, I do more reps and lower amounts of weight than he does. And he does fewer reps and higher amounts of weight. So our fitness goals are compatible for being workout buddies because a lot of the routines are the same. But if I tried to lift the same amount as him or anywhere near that, I would seriously hurt myself. So I listen to my body. I've mentioned my bum knee before, so I'm doing leg presses and stuff. I'm not going to go too far in that because I need to strengthen those muscles so I don't mess up that ligament again. I'm working my way up slowly and listening to my body. So I am challenging myself, but I'm not going to injure myself because I don't want to set back my progress. And also, I don't want to hurt myself. Who wants that? So this is one reason why a lot of folks recommend sticking to cardio or yoga type classes for group exercises. Now that said, if you want to pick up a new routine like boxing or weight training, you can also consider a one-on-one session or several with a personal trainer to ensure that you have the proper form before engaging in group classes. That'll help you out a lot. If you have the proper form, you are less likely to injure yourself and you're more likely to get correct results. I'm sure we've all seen people with abs that are kind of crooked from not having proper form. You can do that with any of your muscles. So in addition to hurting yourself, you can also make your muscles grow weird. So we want to make sure that we are doing everything right. Just like learning an instrument or martial arts, when we're doing our fitness goals, get the technique down first and the speed will come naturally. We're going to go on another break, and when we come back, we are going to talk about the top ways that I recommend for improving motivation and discipline.
GSMC Beauty Tips Podcast gives you advice on everything from hair to fashion to skincare products. We'll talk about the latest trends in makeup, hairstyles, and anti-aging remedies. And we'll cover all of the newest fashion trends. If you have an interest in or questions about the beauty trends that might work best for you, the Golden State Media Concepts Beauty Tips Podcast has got you covered. Download the GSMC Beauty Tips Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back. In our last segment, we were talking about social collaboration, how committing to fitness and wellness exercises with friends can really increase your likelihood of completing your goals and of getting the most out of your goals. Now we're going to talk about some great ways to improve motivation and discipline. One of the best ways out there is just learning from your past mistakes. So experience is the best teacher. I frequently say that the lessons we learn the hard way are the ones that stick with us. That is something you can quote me on. And I firmly believe that. The lessons that I remember the best are the ones that I learned the hard way. I had a teacher in community college, actually my first English teacher, my first college teacher, who graded our papers so hard. She would take off 2 points for any spelling or grammar mistake. And this was over 10 years ago, guys. This was in the early days of, Microsoft Word with the spell check and everything. I didn't really have a grammar check function at that point. So you had to be on top of your game or she was going to get you. So I got my first paper back and she redlined all of it. I went from homeschooling to that redline paper overnight, but I learned the first time what she was talking about. She left me notes in there as well for constructive criticism. And after that, I made A's on all the papers because I learned that lesson the hard way. So just whenever you make a mistake, Galway doesn't want you to think of it as a mistake. Reserve judgment and think about, why did it happen that way? Don't beat yourself up about it. Just approach it with mindfulness. Use the Galway method of focusing on that inner game. So observe your actions without judgment. So quiet self one. Visualize your objective. Trust self two to perform. And then observe that progress without judgment again. And loop to keep yourself on a healthy, motivational method of doing better. Well, Galway wouldn't want me to say doing better. My bad. To working on your performance. How about that? Working, I don't think, is a qualitative value judgment. So the next thing I recommend is prioritizing your work. I have trouble with this with my fitness goals in particular. So if I have a whole bunch on my plate between my volunteer work and my jobs and my freelance work, and then, I like to do fun favors for friends, I can get really bogged down in everything I have to do. So one thing that helps me out a lot is having a desk calendar. That helps me not drop my fitness routine. Especially as women, we tend to put everybody else's needs ahead of our own, and then, we're left without any spoons for our own problems at the end of the day. So if I have a whole bunch of things due to my bosses or to the nonprofit and to my friends, and I also need to work out, my fitness goals are the first thing that tend to go. And that's what I'm working on in 2020, is making sure that I take care of me so that I can still take care of everyone and everything else. Where are my fellow Capricorns at? I don't know if y'all believe in astrology, but I think it's fun. So if you're going to use a desk calendar for priorities, I recommend using different colored pens. So I have general notes in pink because that's just the color I had, and I'm trying to live a more sustainable lifestyle. So I'm using the pens that I have before I purchase any more because I have an ungodly amount. And I use red for deadlines and just black in general for things that I need to do repeatedly, but that are not real deadlines. So for me, so far that's working. I purchased this desktop calendar for $3 at Target over Christmas, and like in the front clearance section, like where they have like the cool like new holiday stuff. It's real cheap. So I got that there, super cheap. It's working really well for me, and I highly recommend it. You have to update it daily though and check it daily. So that's the part that I'm working on for me right now, because I'd used it a lot the first week and a half, and then my birthday hit, and then I didn't use it for a couple of days, and now I'm back to using it again, and it looks kind of crazy because now I have everything written down because I wrote it down all at once. So that made me feel a little bit overwhelmed, whereas if I had written it down daily, it would have been a little bit more consistent and a small time allotment and those small steps. So one raindrop raises the sea. That's what we're going for with our prioritization. So some things do have to be done, and that's why I have that red to pink to black. Black is something that has to be done, or it should be done, but that's going to be my last priority for the day, whereas the red is first and then the pink. So you can do a color gradient if you want. You can do whatever method you want. Use highlighters. Get wild with it. Whatever works for you. But help yourself feel less anxious by prioritizing the things that you need to work on. So you can compartmentalize what you need to do right now for that fitness goal. Like, you want to go ahead and bench press, 100 pounds, but we are right now at we're closer to the 20, 40 pound level. So let's go ahead and plot that out with those consistency and those small steps of our fitness goals or our health and wellness goals on here. Put your bullet journaling in there if journaling is what's important for you for one of your wellness methods. I calendar in my self-care. That's just what I do to make sure that I do it, because otherwise I am going to forget. That helps me, and I hope it helps you. I also recommend taking frequent breaks. Remember, your brain really could use a break about every 45 minutes for about 10 to 15 minutes. And your eyes can too. They recommend that after about 45 minutes of screen time that you get up and you go look out a window at something far away that's natural and not a screen, like trees or something, for a little bit. That just helps give your eyes a break. Taking these breaks is just going to help you feel refocused and refreshed in general. And if you want to do a good job and you're a workaholic like I am, you need to feel refocused and refreshed. And, you can't just be a stress ball all the time. That's also not good for your cortisol levels. We talked about those the other day as well. So the other thing that we're going to focus on, lastly, is team exercise. So healthy, positive competition, where we are collaborating with each other, we're congratulating each other and encouraging each other without doing anything crazy that could hurt ourselves by trying to impress people, can help you by both increasing your accountability and making you work out harder. So they also did another study that found that cycling on a stationary bike with a friend for 30 minutes resulted in folks self-reporting feeling calmer after a workout when compared to those who cycled alone, according to a study in the International Journal of Stress Management. So that's going to help reduce those cortisol levels by working out with a friend. It's also going to just generally reduce your stress and just help you calm and feel better. So if you're dealing with stress in your daily life, as I'm sure all of us are, this is a great way to knock out 3 birds with one stone. It's good for your mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical wellness to be working out with a friend. So try making a racquetball date or a basketball date with your friends at a regular time throughout the week, and then you're going to have that social exercise, particularly if it's with good quality friends. Now, you can do one with a whole bunch of friends and do quantity with your friends, but remember that for our social wellness, we want to focus on quality. All right, that's all I have for you guys today. I hope that this has helped you guys feel more motivated and encouraged to cultivate your motivation and discipline. I'd love to hear your own ideas about what works best for you on social media. Hit us up on Twitter and Instagram, Facebook. Anyway, I will find any way that you send it to me, I will find it. So thank you for listening to the GSMC Health and Wellness Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'd like to ask you to please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review. That always really helps us. Also, if you could please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you kindly, and have a good night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Health and Wellness Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.